So I'm Stephanie Kesson. I am the founder of the Online Itinerant, and tonight you're joining me for a Tuesday tour. I want to highlight a few things that's inside of the program. Specifically, what I want to talk about is the question. I hear it a lot. A lot of times people say to me, how do we identify if a student needs an interpreter? And how do we identify if they understand sign language and how do we develop their sign language? So there's some resources inside of our program that kind of helps kind of navigate those tricky questions because it's not always a clear-cut answer, which is what makes it such a challenge. I just updated the website, so it has a brand new face look. I think you might appreciate it. So this is the website. It might look a little bit different for you now because it says just made over this weekend. This is the onlineitinerant.com. And you will notice that you can kind of pinpoint what your role is, and you will kind of get an outline of how the online itinerant can support you in that role. So you are here on the live tour, which I do every Tuesday, and it is for anybody who just kind of would like a little better tour of what is inside the online itinerants. But it kind of walks through everything and then it talks you through some or the pricing at the end. But what I want to point out to you are a couple things here. First of all, the professional academy or the online itinerant is not exclusive for itinerant teachers. It is for, I like to say, any adult who loves on a child who is deaf or hard of hearing, who loves or works with. So we're talking about teachers of the deaf, whether you're itinerant or whether you are resource or classroom or anything, but also parents and interpreters, speech and language pathologists, educational audiologists, and of course, administrators. And then there are also people who kind of fit in a different niche, and there's always a place for them as well. So truly, the program is for everybody who is working with a child and wanting to be able to support their success in the classroom and beyond. So if you are a member already, then you will be able just to click here. This does look a little bit different again. So we have current highlights. I'm just going to give you a quick tour of what the current highlights are. So these are our monthly, we have a live training the first Thursday of every month. Now, this is always included in a professional academy membership or the Friend Academy, which is our parent program. So this is included in those programs. And our next one is on assessing language skills in preschool children who are deaf or hard of hearing. Here's the thing. Many of our children who are in preschool, they pass all of the assessments and people say, oh, they're doing great. They're at grade level. And then they don't give them an IEP as they step into the K-12 system. And they're doing great as they're in preschool. But then once they get into the K-12 system, they start to fall apart. But it's really hard to get that IEP up and running again. You have to go all the way through all of the new eligibility factors. And so it takes a while sometimes. So this is about really honing in on the language skills of our preschool children who are deaf and hard of hearing and making sure that we know what we need to know before we would consider not providing an IEP for them, and dropping any type of services as they enter the K-12 system. This is a Tuesday tour. Again, we have it every Tuesday. Hopefully, you all have seen our audit-proof IEP goals. So this is something that is free to this is something that's free to anybody is our audit-proof IEP goal bank for self-advocacy, self-identity, and transition. So this here is a free booklet that gives you the assessment and then it gives you the IEP goals. For people who are members of the professional academy, it goes further. And not only do you get the IEP goals, but you get the objectives and the benchmarks. And then you also get all of the lessons to be able to teach all of the IEP goals and then the data collection sheet. So there's really a lot of just wonderful things for members it goes a little bit extra, in addition to just the IEP goal bank. And you may have heard about this. The online itinerant is piloting a future conference, and this conference is going to be on board a cruise ship. So we're piloting it in May for the real one to come up after that. So if you're like, ooh, a conference on a cruise ship, I'd like to learn more, then I encourage you to check it out, get on the Facebook group, and keep your eyes open. We are piloting it in 2 months, in 8 weeks. And then this, of course, is for administrators. This is a perfect training for administration on how the online itinerant can support all the staff that are working with the deaf and hard of hearing students in the district. So these are our current highlights that you can access from the website. We also have individual trainings when you click on the store. The CEUs and the credits, I want to make sure everybody knows that we do offer a nice selection of credits. So we've got Act 48, that's for Pennsylvania, AG Bell, we've got ASHA, we've got New York, CTLE, we've got Illinois, we've got Minot, which is graduate credit, and then we've got RID for interpreters. And if your state requires a special kind of credit and it's not on this page, if you let me know, I love to go through the process, and if we can add your state to our list, I will do that. Some states are a little tricky and I can't do it, but if it's possible, then I will. So just let me know if your state is not on there, then, and you need specific credits for your state, then we can see what we can do to add those. Okay, then I want to make sure that you know that we do accept purchase orders. So if you are talking to your school district about becoming a member, there is membership through purchase orders. You can click on there for more information. And then, of course, we've got our blog. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you are aware of some of these other offers through the online itinerant. Once you are a member, you come to this website and you can enter the portal in two places. You can either come to this icon right here and click here. It will say My Libraries, Settings, or Log Out. You want to go to the library, but you can also just click right here on the button. It will take you to the same place. So inside the library, this is what you would see if you were a professional academy member. Now, right here are the app resources. So just so you know, there is a special app that's branded for the online itinerant. You do not need to be a member to get these free goodies through the app, but you do have to access it through the app. So what you need to do is go to your app store, find the online itinerant, download it for free. There's no charge or anything for it. Then you go to the offers and you go to the app offers, and you'll get these resources. So there's some free assessments in there. There's some free little mini trainings. It's especially great if you are an itinerant teacher, because there are some special itinerant hacks, because I know itinerants tend to be on their phone while they're driving. That tends to be their lifeline. But if you haven't added the app, go ahead and do it. You'll want to do that. There's some great things that come out in there. And then our user guides are some of our things that kind of help pinpoint for you the answers to your questions. So if you are a new teacher and you just want to know, what do I need to know as a brand new teacher? Then you can click on that. That will help you kind of pinpoint what you're looking for. If you just mute our background noise here. Whoops. It's not letting me mute the cell phone, so just try to push through that. Okay. So if you are doing beginning of the year in services, you want to know, what do I need to look for beginning of the year in services? There's all the specific materials and tools that will just kind of guide you right there. So we're going to be back in that in a minute, because we're talking about ASL resources. The other things I want to point out to you might look a little bit different, because I have made a few tiny changes. Our live meetups and bonus trainings. So that is what we're doing every Thursday, is either a meetup or a training. So we've got power hours for professionals the second and the fourth week of the month, and then a power hour for parents the third week. And then the first week, of course, is our live training. So Thursdays are kind of our community days. We kind of hang out as a community. And then we've got our professional on-demand trainings. And then here's something that I want to make sure that you are aware of, because if you are in the professional academy, then you actually can add the Friend Academy for free into your program, but then you also get free parent memberships for all of the parents on your caseload. So it doesn't matter if you work with 4 families or you work with 24 families. You can get the Friend Academy, which is it stands for Family Resources, Information, and Education for Navigating the Deaf Journey. So this is a special program for parents that will give you special parent trainings, also connect parents with other parents and give parent tools and resources in this toolbox. So it's typically $199 per family, and it's worth every penny of that. But for you as the teacher that works with that child, my whole goal is to be able to support you, make your job easier, and to help you walk alongside these parents better and more effectively. So this allows you to say, hey, I've got a coupon code for you and you can join this program. I'm in it too. And it allows you just to walk alongside your parents that much better. So this is definitely the fastest growing component of the professional academy right now. We have over 100 parents that are in the program that are from other teachers who are signed up and involved, and they want to know more about how to be able to support their own child. So this is just kind of a look at your platform, your account when you log in as an Academy member. So today, I want to go ahead and go into these user guides, and I'm going to show you some of our resources for children learning sign language. So you'll notice in here, this is a document. Let me just kind of make it bigger. And I get a lot of questions about this. So here is why. Here is how you can support a child learning sign language. And then these are what we have inside of the academy, a few things that we have inside of the academy that just supports each and one of these things. So what I would like to talk to you about, what I'd like to say is a lot of people ask me, how do I know if a student needs a sign language interpreter? Now, here's the thing. Whether or not a student needs a sign language interpreter does not have to do with whether or not they understand sign language. That is not the decisive point as whether or not a student should consider an interpreter. The decisive point is, do they have access to the auditory information that is around them for them to be able to learn in their environment? So when you look at it that way, can they understand what's being said? Do they get, if you were to give them like a functional listening evaluation or something like that, would they be able to score 95% or better in all situations? So all these situations, if you're familiar with the FLE, which it is inside, we do have this inside of our program. The FLE judge, it rates, it listens to, excuse me, it watches a child. They have to listen to you in close and from a distance, and you give them some words and they have to repeat it. And then you do the same thing in background noise, close and at a distance. Then you do the same thing when they can't see your mouth. So maybe you turn them around backwards or you cover your mouth, and they have to do the same thing. They do close and and at distance, and then you mix and match. So you want to actually give them a listening situation that you are at a distance in background noise when they cannot see your face. This is a very realistic teaching scenario. This is the condition that they are in often within their classroom. And you want to test that and see how much access they have in that listening situation. And honestly, if they're below 95, 93% in that challenging situation, then they don't have equal access to their education throughout the day. And that's what needs to open up the conversation about whether or not they should have a sign language interpreter. With that said, With that said, you definitely do not want to just give a child a sign language interpreter without being absolutely intentional that they learn sign language. Because a child is not going to learn sign language through watching an interpreter, especially if they have some auditory access. If they have auditory access, they're going to lean on that auditory access. They will be less likely to, and the more auditory access they have, the more likely they will lean on that, and the less likely they will really learn sign language. Not that a sign language interpreter wouldn't help them in some ways, but in order for them to really benefit from that, we have to be intentional about making sure that they have opportunity to learn sign language. And sign language is not learned, any language is not learned by somebody speaking it at you or signing it at you for most of the day. It needs to be taught intentionally and in a give and take conversational situation. So this is a handout that kind of talks about that. So it talks about why we want to be intentional about teaching sign language and then how to do it. And then inside the program here, we've got some available tools for you. So I'm just going to click on these and give you a little peek of them. On the infographic, you will be able to do the same thing. You just click on it and you see. So these are all tools within assessments that are all within the teaching toolbox. So inside the teaching toolbox, we have a whole bunch of assessments, and this is one of them. Now, this particular assessment is not a long involved one, but it does show, and this one does lean on ASL. So I know when we've got sign language, we've got the spectrum of sign language, we've got English, signed exact English, and then we've got American Sign Language, which has its own grammar and syntax. And you can be anywhere in between this. This one kind of gives where a child is on that spectrum, on that scale of American Sign Language. And you'll notice that it starts at intermediate. So this is for for kids who are beyond the very basics. You are starting to have conversation and they are able to really use sign language to communicate with you. So this is a great tool to kind of figure out where their signing skills are and then to be able to set up some IEP goals on how to develop it further. So it goes into social language, questions, syntax, verbs, classifiers, and pronouns. And then it kind of gives you a scale of from 1 to 9 of where to go. So this is if you are wanting to have a sense of the ASL scale of development. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit more general, I want to point out the expanded core curriculum assessment. So this is a, a huge document that the online itinerant modified from another document, but it turned it into being able to take all the skills and created rubrics for you so that you can actually assess all of the skills that we're looking at. So there's actually 50 pages of rubrics on here. So let me just show you. Can you see this document? Am I sharing my screen that you can see? It says pages 1 of 77.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I am going to go to, see which page 35 here. And we're just going to zip down to page, okay, 35. It'll take a second for it to load up. Okay, so by the way, let me just show you these different rubrics here. Because I kind of say if you only have one assessment, if you only have one assessment tool for all of your students with hearing loss, this is what you want. Because again, we've got 50 pages of checklists and rubrics, here we go, starting with audiology use, understanding hearing loss, and amplification management, and environmental management. Then it even has career education, So great for a transition, including work skills, job seeking skills, money management. Okay, but here we are in communication. So under communication, we've got auditory skill development, and then we've got listening in the background. So how they do in that background noise. And then here is our ASL development. So this has our beginning, intermediate, and advanced levels, and it's just a checklist. So this is a great way. It even starts with uses ASL babbling, not true signs. So this starts off from very beginner and it goes to more advanced. And it's not huge, but it is very informative. So you can kind of get a sense of where they are in their current ASL development, and that will help you identify where you want to go next. But there's also speech development, receptive communication. I'm not going to show you every single area in this set of rubrics because there are a lot, but I do want to show you this one because I love this. This is a whole section of family education. So if you work with a family, if you are a family member, this is a great kind of checklist for you to kind of look and see how are things going in terms of what your understanding is of the school system and IEPs and what your child's needs are. But for you as a teacher or if there's a birth to three provider, this really walks you through the different things that families need to understand. So this is kind of a hard thing to find, and it's in here, and I couldn't recommend it more. So, and it goes for families, even what they understand in terms of amplification and family and child interactions. I mean, it's really kind of a nice little form, includes communication strategies for families as well. All right, so that is another assessment that we've got that helps kind of identify um, how a child is signing and what their ASL development is. But here's another one. This one is fantastic. This one is called the Kendall Conversational Proficiency Scale. And I love this because conversation, vocabulary, and language starts at the conversational level. So often we have kids who cannot have a conversation yet in any language, and yet they are sitting in a general education classroom and they're learning about academic concepts, about the Revolutionary War, about St. Peter and St. Patrick's Day, or St. Patrick and St. Patrick's Day, but it's very academic. It's not conversational at all, but they don't have the conversational language to be able to build on. We have to build that conversational language first before the academic language is ever going to stick. So this actually is 7 levels of conversational language. And the goal is to be, let's see, the regular hearing children, or I shouldn't say hearing children, people who are fluent in their language, okay, in a language, reaches a level 7 by the time they are 11 to 13 years of age. So that's the goal, is to be absolutely fluent in your language. But this walks you through every level that there is that begins with birth. Even level 0 or level 1 starts at birth. So it talks about does the child use nonverbal means to request help even by looking at something that they want and pointing, anything like that, guiding a child, guiding. So that starts with even non-language, nonverbal, we would call it. And then it moves all the way up to that fluent level of language. So here you go. Does the child use the language to establish the identity of things and people? So asks who and what questions. Now, this was created actually for kids that use sign language, but it can be modified very easily for kids that are using listening and spoken language, because there's not a lot in here that is specific to using signs, right? Like right here, does the child talk about several coordinated but independent events and states the name and time? So I go to the library and get a book and come back. we read book. So you can assess their language in both listening and spoken language as well as sign language. So these are a few of the assessments that we have that will help you identify their current sign language level. So if you've got a child who has an interpreter, I strongly recommend you assess their level of sign language. And if they don't have an interpreter, but you're deciding that maybe they should get an interpreter, then you want to do both. Definitely go ahead and provide the interpreter, but then you want to at the same time work on building their language as well. Now, some people say, do you have any trainings? Any trainings on how to build that language or how to work on literacy and reading and writing for students that use sign? And we do. We've got 3 trainings that are exclusive and specific to this topic with sign language. Most of our other trainings absolutely apply to students, whether they're using listening and spoken language or sign language, but these ones are very specific towards kids that are signing. And you will notice all of our trainings that we have are taught in micro modules. So you'll notice that this one is broken into multiple parts, and the longest one is 16 minutes. So we do that intentionally because you maybe don't have a full hour to sit in front of your computer and do a training. Most people don't. But if you have the app on the phone, you can also listen to all the trainings from the app, which is really nice, especially if you're a traveling teacher, because maybe you have 20 minutes between one school to another, and you just would love to listen to a portion of a training without having to get lost in it or figure out where to start over or anything like that. And so our trainings are taught in these micro modules for the purpose of being able to support you in micro learning. So bite-sized pieces. Either you can think about it and process it, or maybe you can apply it and then come back and do the next step. Um, the research shows that when we are fed by a fire hose, when we go to a conference and we learn so much great things, we actually only retain about 10% of it. We just don't get enough to really be able to apply it and implement it. It's actually not a great learning structure. But being able to break things apart, have you do it slowly, not too much all at once, is much more effective. And then here are just a few of our activities that we have that is geared specifically towards kids that sign. So we have a whole giant list of our ASL resources. Let's just wiggle on over here. There we go. Okay, so again, this is in the teaching toolbox. Let me just kind of show you the teaching toolbox. I haven't given you a more broad view of the teaching toolbox. So this is what's inside the teaching toolbox. All right, so these are our sections. We've got our whole big section of assessments and forms. That's where all of those assessments were that I showed you. We've got a whole section on auditory processing. All the activities in here are about following directions and just listening and understanding comprehension. We've got auditory training. This one is the only tool that is specific to a communication mode. This one is listening and spoken language and that auditory training. But then we've got our language building, self-advocacy. We've got tons of resources for self-advocacy. A lot of people say, oh, I don't know how to teach self-advocacy. We've got loads of activities in here for self-advocacy. Yeah. And then same with our self-identity section. People go, or social emotional, self-identity. People are often looking for curriculum to try to teach kids about their hearing loss and other people who have hearing loss. And this is our self-identity curriculum. It's really robust. We've got so many activities in here. And I'm going on a little bit of a rabbit trail for you, but I just want to highlight what this looks like because I'm really proud of it. So every person who's in here, we've got a little video about them, and your student can learn about them. But then after they learn about that person who is a famous deaf or hard of hearing individual, you can click here, and there's a little activity that compare, it lets that child kind of compare and contrast them to this other person. But there's a lot of learning that is inside of here. So, for example, this is about Cece Bell. She's the author of El Defo. It's a great book if you're not familiar with it. But it kind of talks about, okay, so she was actually born hearing. Yes, that happens. Some people are born hearing, but then it talks about that she got a sickness that caused her to lose her hearing. So that's where we get to teach causes of hearing loss. And you get to ask your child, ask your student, do you know what caused your hearing loss? And you get to just naturally build that in. Then there's all kinds of how people communicate. Everybody communicates a little bit differently. And then there's usually some conversation about how that person felt about their hearing loss. So Cece hated her FM system and she tried to hide it. Of course, we know that almost every kid is going to say, yeah, that's both of us, at least once they get into middle school, at least. Um, so it really gives them a great opportunity to just kind of learn that they are not the only person that is experiencing hearing loss. And then it's always kind of brought in a positive light at the end here. And then you get to talk about that with your students. So, and then you get to compare and contrast and talk about what they have in common. So for every single one of these people that we have inside this unit, we have that type of activity. So kind of cool. All right, so going back to the activities, here we go. We were talking about the ASL resources. So inside of this ASL resources, oops, I jumped around. I know, I knew I was coming here. Okay, so inside the toolbox, here we go. Inside the toolbox, we've got this language building, and inside of there is where we're going to see these other things. But here are the other sections of the toolbox. So here we go. Inside the language building, these are all the different activities that builds any kind of language, but this is the ASL resources. So here we go. We have tons of ASL story videos that are linked in here. So if you want your student to be able to watch some videos of people signing books and to work on some literacy and reading, we've got loads of them listed. So this is from ASDC, who has a huge amount of ASL stories. So you can probably find maybe even what you're reading in class, and then you can show that story in sign language. And that's not only for your student, that's a great supplement for all of the students that are in your student's class. So
So
I
does
just
that
randomly
mean,
clicked on one right
oh,
here.
okay. I was gonna say, does it have voiceover or is it just silent with ASL only?
It depends on the video. It
Mm.
depends on the video. So some of them are ASL only, but with the words. But some of they always show the words, but some of them are voiceovers. So
Some
like
of
we
them
could
has
take
a narrator voicing off screen while the ASL storyteller is signing.
depending on the story. Yep.
Because I
So
find often that the preschool doesn't want to show a video if there's no sound to go with it,
sure,
just for the hearing kids. So
understandable.
it's always hard to
Understandable.
find ones that have voiceover to go with the ASL.
Yeah, so you would want to kind of screen it ahead of time and see which ones. This particular library that ASDC has is that they have just compiled from lots of different people and
Okay.
they've put it in there. So these are not all done by them, but
Okay.
many of them are. But when we come back to some of these other stories, like the Open Hands library, I'm pretty sure that this one does have the voiceover. Let's take a look here. Um, let's see if I can come. So actually this one doesn't, but this is just like a picture book. So you would want to screen it. You would want to screen it and see. Yep.
I've noticed like because I know Rocky Mountain Deaf School it doesn't have voiceover, but I've noticed other people have taken their videos and then put a voiceover on
Sure.
top of it. So just when you see her, you might think, oh, there's no, but you never know. Someone might have taken it and added the voice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so we've got Texas Outreach, but also PBS is on here. I don't know if you're familiar with all the PBS cartoons now that have the sign language interpreter in it. I mean, it's really cool. So this is another great one that you could show to that mainstream class, and then that interpreter is right on here. I don't know if you can hear the audio. Let me just make sure that I've got it so that you can hear the audio here. Okay, so this is just PBS.
When there's a problem, what do we say? Work it out, work it out, work it out, wombats. Where there's a will, there's always a way. Work it out, work it out, work it.
So PBS has a whole library of these. And of course, Disney Plus also does too. So this is another great resource to share with your family members so that they know that their child can have that interpreter, that signing on their screen when they're watching their their shows. Let's see. So then we also have a lot of people that ask me about how do we learn sign language? Are there any lessons? What kind of curriculum is there for sign language? We've also got a couple of those listed here. Sign School is a great free program it's all on demand. I know many schools that actually, if you're not familiar with this, they actually have this as some of their stations. So the kids go to centers and they have a sign language center. See if I can show you mine so you can take a peek at this. So they have a sign language center and the kids are on the screen on learning from this sign language. And let me just show you what this looks like. Here's about me. So this teaches, it's very kid friendly, it's very family friendly, and it
Welcome.
teaches, it's
Hey,
got the
you signed that
voiceover.
wrong.
No, that's not wrong. I'm left-handed, which
So it's got the curriculum, it's got the signs, it's all self-driven, super cute, free. That one is free. And then another one, of course, that people really enjoy. Let me get back to my paper here. Is the life prints. So that one is also linked here for people. And then the signing room is an adult program. It's great for parents. And this is an immersive sign language conversational back and forth. So it teaches the same skills that we talked about in that Kendall proficiency scale, but it's for you, for parents, for the adults who are the models, the language models for the kids. So these are a few of these resources that are available through, and these are all our ASL resources. But then we've got some great language challenges. So this is great for young kids. These are games so that we're not doing like flashcards and stuff like that. It's all very play-based learning, but perfect for preschool children. And then we've got our wordless picture prompts. This is one of my favorite ways to teach language is in this wordless picture prompts. So this is where you want, where these are. This is in here, this section here. And you click on this, and then there are okay, so there is a picture. And so you just talk about the picture, what's going on. Usually it's got children, it's bright colors, something that maybe your student can relate to, but you can just build in all the language that you are working on through these wordless prompts. So anytime that you've got a picture book without words or anything like that, it's a great resource. So these are just a few of the resources that is inside the Professional Academy for you. So what we talked about was we talked about 3 assessments, then we talked about 3 trainings, and then we talked about a few activities that are built inside of the program. And those are the things that I wanted to highlight for you tonight. So I want to go ahead and stop my screen share and see what questions this has brought to you. Anybody have any questions about what I buzzed through tonight or what you saw?
So when we can't find something, can we like, hey, where was that thing? I can't
Yeah,
find
I'm so
it.
glad you said that because yes, 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 you can. And let me show you because that actually comes up. So once you are inside of the toolbox here or wherever you are, okay, you'll see the magnifying glass, the search bar. So you can search for anything that you like. And so I just searched for ASL. And here are all the things that we saw, but more. There's lots of them. So if there's something that you are looking for that you're like, oh, what was that? I don't know where to find it, then you can search it. Now, what you do need to know is that each product, okay? So each one of these little squares has its own search bar. So if you're in the toolbox and you're looking for a training, it won't come up. You have to go to the trainings and then you would search the trainings for it. So you'll go back to this magnifying glass and you'll search whatever you're asking about. So you were talking about CAPD, right? That you had watched that training, that video. So here we are. This is the training that you saw, and you can go back to this full training. So that is in the search bar. And that's also something that is coming in the future. I hate to do any spoiler alerts, but the future of being able to navigate and get answers is really looking up in terms of what we're going to be offering in the near future, where you will actually be where the online itinerant will be able to implement some AI to it, and you'll be able to say, I have a student who doesn't have access to language. What trainings should I look at? And then it will come up with all the trainings and all the lessons that you can use that would be able to support that student. So that is hopefully coming. That's what we're working on next for inside. That was a good question. Other questions? You guys have such great questions. Do you have any students who are signing right now? Okay, great. And how is their language level? Is it like at a good level, or you feel like, oh, I think we really need to work on this for them
Well, yeah,
a little bit?
different kids in different situations, but yeah.
So the most challenging thing to do, the most challenging thing to do is to teach a child who doesn't have who doesn't have a strong language foundation, who has an interpreter, to teach them language in sign. If they either A, that interpreter is their one language model and they're interpreting, right? There's not a lot of this going on. Or they have some auditory access, but it's not really great. It's kind of like so-so, and they're leaning on that. And so they're getting like not much of anything. They're getting a little bit of this and a little bit of this. So it's all just kind of murky. Those are the most difficult. That's the biggest challenge. Those kids are the biggest challenge when it comes to getting them a strong language foundation. And you can do it. You can absolutely do it, but you have to be very intentional about what that looks like. And these like lessons that you're turning off your voice, you're going to say, all right, we are signing right now. We're going to turn off our voice and you're just going to build that signing. And then there's going to be other times that you're saying, okay, now we're going to maybe just work on our auditory muscles. And now I'm not going to sign, but we're only going to build that auditory muscle right now. And that's what we're going to do. And so you need both. You need to build both of those muscles intentionally. And then you can have time where you're doing both at the same time, where you're maybe simcomming if that's what that child needs. If it's a child who doesn't have that auditory access and that interpreter is like their primary language model all day long, then it's not a lot of this natural give and take. You have to be able to have time that you embed in that they're playing, that they're reading, that they're just having conversation, and you're coming in to do that too. Sometimes that's really hard for an interpreter if they're in a higher, you know, third grade and above. There's just not a lot of that built into the classroom because it becomes very academic. But if that student doesn't have that time, they will not have that foundation. So it has to just be really, really intentional. And that's where it's nice to be able to put those IEP goals in there about their language development and where they are and what their needs are and work towards that. So, so great. All right, Bridget, you got to sneak in. I didn't get to say hello to you. So welcome to our Tuesday tour.
Thank you. I actually had a question. Is there any and sorry if you already said this, resources for students who also have other disabilities? I feel
Mhm.
like that's where I kind of lack. Like it's hard for me to find like how do I support the student that maybe has autism or Down syndrome
Yeah.
and that may be more than just the hearing loss?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is kind of our fastest growing need. I think people are saying more and more, like, I've got the student that it's more than just that. Our number one support for that is to come to Power Hours. Are you a member of the Professional Academy already?
Yes.
Awesome. So our Power Hours actually this Thursday is our next one. So you definitely want to come to that Power Hour and be able to ask the questions. And I say that I'm going to show you the resources here. But I guarantee you, no matter how many resources I have, if I had 400 resources that are for students who are deaf plus additional disabilities, your student would still probably be different and be unique in that way. So I always recommend coming to the Power Hours and talking to other people and seeing what they are doing. With that said, though, here in the on-demand training section, if you come here, we have a section that is called Deaf and Other Considerations. And we are growing the section as well. So we've got CAPD, we've got autism, we've got sensory, and the other place that you are going to find this, I'm jumping around here. When you go to your library, okay, because we've focused on this pretty heavily this year and next year as well, inside of our bonus trainings. So those are the trainings that happen the first Thursday of the month. So we just had one on sign language interpreters and teachers collaborating together. That's right here. But also what we had in here, so we have Usher syndrome training, and we had a using AAC devices with deaf students. And then we have pro-tactile sign language, which was fascinating. So you can see we've got some additional ones that are in here and that are coming. So in addition to that, then we also have as a professional academy member and also for your parents. So again, I want to encourage you to get your parents involved in the Friend Academy because then they can come to the parent meetings. And we do have a number of parents. I would say probably at this point, more than 50% of the parents that have been coming, their kids have been deaf plus additional disabilities. So there's some really great parent conversations that are going on.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So what I want to do is we'll go ahead and if there are any other questions, I'll go ahead and answer them. If not, I want to go ahead and wrap up the tour. But then, Kristen, if you want to stay and keep visiting with me for a minute, then we can chat a little bit more about what membership looks like if you have any questions about that. Cassandra, I know you're already a member. Do you have a favorite thing that you have used inside the Professional Academy already?
Right now I'm using as we're writing IEP, the checklist, the new checklist, and I think I'm not sure the folks who are on now I've forgotten what day, but anyway, I think I was sharing that with them that hey, this is available if you remember, and I did share with them that I thought the 5 day challenge I had been a member, but a lot of things I wasn't utilizing because I just did not have the time, just hadn't forced myself to take the time to find where they were. So
Yeah.
these are very good too because they're helpful to like, hey, this is where this is. Oh wow, I hadn't stumbled upon that or hadn't realized that that was there. So yeah.
I know there's a lot inside the
It
academy and people,
is.
they kind
But
of
that's
freeze. They
good.
go, I don't have time to find it all. And here's my favorite hack. I've got a hack for you, first of all, for the toolbox. The toolbox, really, I say bring it to your class with your student and open it up and say, let's just play around, just like you would if you actually had like a toy box and you brought it and you were just like digging out things and you wanted to see what your student thought was interesting and wanted to play with. You can do the same thing with the toolbox. You can sit and explore it together, have them click on anything, and be like, oh, what's this? You want to do this? Let's do it. Or no, let's not do it. Let's keep going. And that is a fun way to kind of discover what's in the toolbox. Yeah. And then the IEP goal bank. So you've been using that. So what's nice about that is you can assess your student, see exactly where they are. Then you can copy and paste, modify it, of course, for your student for the goal, and then you've got all the lessons in there. So you can just click and here are all your lessons to be able to teach your goals. That's great. I'm glad that you're utilizing that. Bridget, how about you? Do you have a favorite tool or a favorite thing inside the professional academy that you've discovered?
Yeah, I really like the toolbox. And I like how they're all organized, like the auditory type of activities or whatever I'm whatever student I'm seeing. I really like that. And it's like already ready for me. I could just either print it out or even do it right on the iPad or on the laptop. I like that a lot.
Great. No more having to load up your trunk with 100 different materials and hope that you have the one that you wanted to have by the time you made it to the class, right? That's great. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me tonight.